let's talk about async and non-blocking code reviews. But first, I want to talk a little bit about scribes. Scribes are the people that copied over the Torah, the holy scripture of the Jewish people, for hundreds of years now. And they've done that painstakingly by hand, according to very specific rules. They take one of about 60 to 80 sheets of parchment that will ultimately become a new Torah, that is specifically tainted, scraped, cured, prepared, according to the rules in the Torah. They take the original Torah and then they start copying over the 304,805 characters, according to specific calligraphic rules. And when they're done with this, they hand this over to the next scribe. And the next scribe takes the original, takes the copy, and starts counting all the letters and the words and the sentences, the paragraphs. They start comparing the center letter, center word, center sentence, center paragraph. And when they find more than 3 errors, that sheet of parchment will not become part of a new Torah. That took them about a week. A week of work gone because of a 4th mistake. You can't, by the way, throw that away. There's holy words on this. So what you do is you put that inside a clay jar. That clay jar goes into a cave. You seal the cave. And that is where we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. Our scripture is based on erroneous documents, hundreds of years old. Imagine making that 4th mistake. A week of work gone. There's no backspace on a feather quill. There's no scribbling it out and going, oh, actually, this is what I meant. This is it. Week of work gone. I mean, we go through some hardship, we think, when we do code reviews, when other people look at our work and, oh, this thing here and this thing here. But imagine this. This is a completely different world, right? I'm Frank Koornstra, and I work in this amazing team at Usabilla here in Amsterdam. We make voice of customer solutions so that our customers know what their customers think of them. We gather that feedback through multiple channels like web, email, and apps. And we use code reviews for nearly everything, for all the code that gets merged in. And that sort of got me questioning, like, can we do this better? Because sometimes it's a little bit rough, right? Let me ask you, who here uses code reviews to merge in their branch, their main code into the main branch, more than 1/3 of the time? Good, almost everyone. More than 2/3? And almost every time? Oh, this is a very good crowd. Nice. I hope I have some really good content for you. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rewards and the efforts involved in code reviews. And that balance must be pretty good, because we still do it. Then, about those efforts. How can we diminish those? How can we make this a little bit better? And finally, how to apply that in a systematic, consistent way throughout your development flow. But first, rewards and efforts. Like I said, this balance must be pretty good. We're still doing it, so we're happy, right? And we hear a lot about the reward sides at conferences like this. It improves quality. Whatever you think of quality. Less defects, better readability, better maintainability, better understandability. All the abilities that you can think of, it would improve. And also communications. Be that inside the team, be that between teams, be that about the domain, the concepts that we use and how they interact, or about the technology. This is the kind of key value store we use. This is the libraries we use, the patterns that we see and the anti-patterns that we don't want to see. And if you look at it like this, quality, it improves. Communications are better. Wow, this is like a perfect picture. Like a perfect picture like this. Pyramids of Giza. Look at these people here in the front. They probably came through the desert for days, and now, almost without water, they reached it. The Pyramids of Giza. But just like this perfect picture, it's maybe not as complete as you like. So I like to sort of look at the other side as well. I'd like to swivel the camera slightly and show you this complete picture. Also talk a little bit about the efforts involved, because we glance over them quite easily sometimes. So the first thing involved in efforts is time, because we all know this instinctively. This stuff takes a lot of time. But how much time? Well, we have this amazing GitHub API, so why not use it? I went into it for a few of the projects at Usabilla. And then I looked at how much time does it take to close that PR. There's two things to keep in mind here. Correlation is not causation. One thing goes up, the other thing goes up as well. It might be that one causes the other causes the one, or that there's a third factor involved causing both of them. Second is, this is not statistically significant. In no way is this statistically significant. This is a few projects in Usabilla, just a few hundred PRs, that is it. Correlation is not causation, statistically not significant. But this is what you see. The median time to close a PR vertically by the amount of hours and categorized by the amount of root comments. And a root comment to me is the fact that you start off a conversation. Every subsequent reply to that root comment is no longer a root comment. And you see here that once you get into that 20 to 30, 30 to 40 amount of root comments, it can take you 400 up to 700 hours on median to close a PR. If you divide this number by the amount of root comments, you get the median time to fix one of those comments. And also here you see if you get over the 10 amount of root comments, it's pretty reasonable to think that it takes you about 10 hours on median to close one of those. The only thing I want to say here is that comments take time. And sometimes we treat them as though they're free. I want to use you should use array map here, not for each. There's an extra line here. Those things don't cost you 10 hours to fix, obviously, but some of these things really take you time. All right, but the quality goes up, right? Yes, if you keep your PR small. Atlassian did some nice research on this. This is one of the things they looked at, amount of files in a PR versus the amount of time spent per file. And what you see here is that once you get into 30 to 40 amount of files, it takes you only about 2 minutes, or it only takes about 2 minutes per file to scan through it, apparently. It's a lot of lines scanned per minute, right? What you see on the left there is the law of triviality, or bike shedding, as we call it, or as Cardinal Richelieu said it, give me 10 lines of the most honest man alive, and I will find something in it to hang him. It is not that disastrous with us. But we've, I think, all been in that PR where there's like 3 lines change and still someone had to find this one thing because people really want to put the effort in and they want to show it. All right, you know what we're going to do? We're going to add more reviewers because more reviewers look at different things. We're going to be fine, except that we're not. Adding more reviewers actually diminishes the time they use per reviewer, and actually the amount of defects found goes down. This is not the defects found per reviewer. This is the total amount of defects found that goes down. What you see here is the bystander effect. Whenever there's an accident, an issue, whatever, the more bystanders you have, the less chance you have of actually getting help, because everybody thinks someone else will do it. And this is what you see here. All right, time's one factor. Cognitive load is another. Usabilla, we use rebasing. So let's say you have 4 commits, 1 interface, and 3 subsequent implementations. Someone doesn't like the interface. All right, you change the method there. In the subsequent 3 commits, make sure you don't have, first of all, do the change. Don't have any new code style issues, static analysis issues. All your unit tests still work. All your integration tests still work. Acceptance tests still work. And someone likes your new method name better. Time, opportunity cost, hits on morale even if things aren't worded nicely. These are all opportunity costs. Costs incurred because we can only spend that scarce resource once. And when I looked at it like that, it made me a little bit sad. It's like, what? This is a lot of effort. Like, why are we still doing this? And I think maybe because we sometimes not do it as smoothly as we can. I think we can apply some tricks here to make it better. Some tricks that we, well, the broader community, the developer community, not per se PHP, have applied to code for a while, namely async and non-blocking tricks. Let me start off with async. Async to me is the fact that you can run into a PR and have a bigger issue. You can pick up that issue, launch it in a different context, wait for it to fall through there. Meanwhile, closing that PR, closing that code review, and if you need to, come back to it with that new answer. But what kind of issues are we looking at? Well, we are a pretty precise bunch. We look at so much stuff during code reviews. And to structure this slightly, I propose looking at this as reward versus conflict. Gives you 4 nice little quadrants to squabble about, so that's good. One thing's for sure, you want the human beings to look at the highly rewarding stuff. The low rewarding stuff is simply not worth it. And the low rewarding stuff is also easily tooled away, usually. Code style issues, PHP/CS. No one should ever have to comment in a code review on code style issues. Never. PHP Stan has things for, is a great tool for static analysis. Unused imports, no longer a thing. So the low rewarding stuff, just use tooling, right? The low conflictual stuff is pretty factual. And that's easy, because there's not a lot of discussion about bugs. Low code coverage, maybe, but things like low quality tests, a little bit harder. Tools like infection let you mutate your original code and see if your tests catch that, so that the quality of your test goes up. And functionality fails. What is functionality? Well, if you use BDD and have tools like Bhat, you can actually define that functionality really well in Gherkin scenarios and run tools to verify that your functionality is still working as expected. What we're left with is a highly rewarding, highly conflictual, and highly subjective quadrant. So let me try to give some answers there, how to get this better. Well, first of all, that offloading, right? Getting those bigger issues out of that low bandwidth of that is a code review. If you have that first service that talks to another service, and you run into, oh, do we really want to use JSON or gRPC or like another, whatever you want? This is a very big issue to discuss on a low bandwidth environment like a PR. So lifting that up into a architecture board, a chapter meeting, a development meeting, your department meeting, I don't know what you have, but lifting it up into that higher bandwidth environment where people talk face to face and can discuss this very rapidly is way better. So that works for technical stuff, but also for communication. You introduce a new component into your architecture. How about giving a presentation? Small one, just saying, look, this is what we want to do here technically. This is the quality we're striving for. This is the kind of reviews we're looking for. Or you have a new teammate. You're dropping them into a PR. That is pretty big. And they have lots of questions. How about sitting next to them and just going through it one-on-one? They can have all the questions they want, and you don't have to like come back to that PR over and over and over again. The tools we talked about before. Let's make sure we can run those locally. At Usability, we use Makefiles in combination with Docker to make sure that we can do this. Makefiles make sure that everyone runs the tools in exactly the same manner, exactly the same configuration, the same arguments, everything. And Docker makes sure that obviously everything runs in exactly the same environment, in production, staging, development, build server, everywhere. Pairing is also a good way to get stuff out of the code review, to get your code review before the code review. You, me, you, we all have those idiosyncrasies in our code. But it's good to get them out before the code review. And finally, communicating up front. This seems very obvious, but this goes wrong all the time. Your code review is not the place where you discover that you don't use this type of key value store. Where infrastructure goes, you can use Couchbase. We only have Redis. We have no interest in using Couchbase as a key value store. But also for stuff like code design. UMLs are a really powerful way to show other people how you think the solution should look like. Make one of them, 10, 20 minutes. Go to your senior people. Look, is this how we want to do this stuff? Is this the right kind of patterns? Being wrong there takes you 1 or 2 minutes to change. Being wrong in the implementation, in the code review, that takes you a lot longer. All right, these were the sort of async things I could think of. You can probably think of a bunch more. But we need to move on to non-blocking. Non-blocking to me is the fact that you have the least amount chance of a blocking comment. A comment that says, look, I need you to fix this first before we can even move on to the rest. To not have blocking comments is a utopia, but to have the least amount of chance, I think is a good thing to strive for. If you do run into that blocking comment, think about what Jeff Bezos introduced in Amazon management, which is disagree and commit. You could probably guess what it's about. His stance is at some point, you try to predict the future. You have different reasoning because of values. Look, this needs to be more flexible. No, this needs to be more flexible. You're talking about the future. You really don't know. There's two questions you need to ask yourself. First of all is, can we go back and fix this? Sometimes these choices are irreversible, and that is hard. And second, how wrong can this really go? If you have satisfactory answers to both of those questions, maybe it's good to give the author of your PR the benefit of the doubt. They did the most research. They looked into this stuff. Disagree and commit. But the committing part is really important. Simply because you can never go back and say, haha, see, I told you so. I was right. You were wrong. That creates an unsafe environment, and that's not what you want. The reviewers that we saw before, if you add more of them, you're going to make your problem worse. So finding the right reviewers is key. One way to do that is to tag your specialists. Open your PR, open your code review, go in there, comment on that SQL query that you were also a little bit unsure about. Yeah, it hits a lot of indexes, but is this really the right way to do it? Say, hey, ad database specialist, can you have a look at this? There's two things happening now. The database specialists, they can really easily go through all your PRs and other people. They will be glad to do it. And second of all, that bystander effect is no longer there. There's no other people reviewing the code also going, yeah, this looks fine. Let me take a look at the rest, right? Another tool to find the right reviewers is GetKills. You can give it 2 commits, and it will tell you the most lines added and subtracted by specific people. So Renato, Rodrigo, Ani would be really good candidates for me here. And then we get to the commenting. In GitHub, you do request changes, bam, that's it. Big blob of changes. What should I do? What should I not do? What suggestions? What's not? Communicating that intent is important. So how about reserving that first character in the comment for blocking or non-blocking? I need you to fix this, or this is just a suggestion. Do with it what you want. Or we'll solve this asynchronously. Maybe you have to give me a little bit more background because I don't know all the things here, but I'm sure that your team does. You have to maybe give a presentation about this component, which is absolutely fine, but you don't have to explain everything here in the PR. These async and non-blocking things are just a few suggestions. But how do you make sure that you apply this in a consistent manner? How do you not walk out of this room and go in 3 weeks' time and go like, there was this guy, let me look up the presentation on the DPC side, and he said something about this one. No, you want to apply this consistently and consequently in a systematic manner. I think what we need as a community is a code review etiquette. An etiquette is nothing more than behaving yourself just a little bit better than you're supposed to in a specific context. But context is highly important, so let me run you through a few of those. First of all, is this inside your team or outside your team? Inside your team, you want to have that intricate knowledge, right, of the naming of everything. But some people also really like it when other teams tweeze apart their code. They're looking for pristine code, the ultimate whatever solution, technically superior to everything. And that is absolutely fine. But if you ask me, if I look at other people's or other teams' code, I tend to take a step back. I tend to look at broader issues. Are we using the right libraries? Are we using the right coding patterns or not using Andy patterns? Are we using the right kind of storage? Hey, is this now event sourced all of a sudden? Why? Why are we now applying this? Have we thought this through? Another context is blast radius. Luckily, we use a lot of microservices where the blast radius is pretty small. Using a new code style rule there, easy to experiment with. Try to implement that same code style rule in a monolith. You have hell to pay for. So blast radius is quite important. Finally, sorry. Finally, robustness. Right? If you're making that new financial system, yes, go ahead, like nail down every centimeter of that. But if you're creating a development tool that spits out some numbers every 3 weeks, and it doesn't do that for a week, and that's fine as well, those code reviews need to look very different to me. All right, now you have these tricks. You have these contexts that you find important, where things are changing according to the code review. What you do now is you go sit in a room with your team, with your development department, with, I don't know, your chapter, whoever you want. You pick some code reviews that are highly conflictual, low conflictual, a lot of comments, not a lot of comments. Close pretty quickly, didn't close that quickly. And you start doing what you do to your code. You start doing code review reviews. You go sit in that room and say, look, what context applies here? What kind of tricks can we do? Asynchronous, non-blocking. How could we have done better? What you're dabbling around here in is the complex quadrant of the Kinefin framework. The Kinefin framework makes sense of your and my behavior in specific environments. And this environment is pretty complex. We use retrospective causality. We can look back and make sense of things. Hey, Maria didn't have her morning coffee. Marco did sit this slightly nasty thing on the code review, and then things poof, exploded. Conflict everywhere. Retrospective causality learns us that this happened, but Marco didn't do that on purpose. Marco didn't know this about Maria not having her morning coffee, but yeah, in the end, we know these things. What we try to make with this etiquette is an emergent practice. Right? We discuss these things. We probe by looking at these code reviews that we've done. We sense by discussing amongst ourselves in that room what context, what tricks, how could we have done better. And we respond by walking out of that room and having a little bit more knowledge of this is how we do code reviews in our organization, development department, team, wherever. Final words. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't stop doing comments, although they take time. Don't stop doing code reviews, but be mindful about the opportunity cost that we all create in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of hits on morale even. Think about these async and non-blocking tricks. Think of a bunch more. And about these contexts that we have to create this etiquette in. And then start sitting in that room every week, 2 weeks, month, whatever you do. Start creating that etiquette, because I think that is the only way we can achieve truly async and non-blocking code reviews. Thanks very much. Any questions? Sure.
If you were talking about these things that sometimes improving can be seen as a slap in the face, but then a month later, is that correct?
Yes. Async slap in the face. Yeah, sure. Well, I think what usually happens is that sometimes people haven't looked at the complete context. They haven't seen the broader issues, and you could sort of slightly nudge them as like, hey, have you considered this and this and this? And then hopefully, if they're graceful about it, they can go, oh shit, yeah, I've overlooked these issues, and then it's quite easy. I can see this going, yeah, I can see that it's sort of can lead to a conflictual situation, but at the same time, you also want to think about the broader quality, right? Because one person is annoyed by this specific fact that you're not even doubting their skills, but you're just, sometimes you have a broader view of the issue, right? You have more context. You are in different conversations in them. That sometimes has to suffer a little bit. So yeah, but I mean, as long as you package it nicely, I think it shouldn't be an issue, right? I think it's more about and sort of highlighting the fact that you have more context, you have other conversations, and yeah, something like that. Sure. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I have to repeat your question apparently because of the recording. So, how to prevent that batch from async stuff being solved later to not be solved at all, basically, right? Yeah. So, usability, we had this this weekly meeting. It's called architecture board. So as soon as something popped up in one of the code reviews and it was should be solved on a higher sort of level, we immediately added it to the agenda for the next meeting. And so there you keep track of it. You don't even have to solve it like that week or the next week, but at least you have stuff like, we also had like an, Louise help me, icebox, whatever thing there. And then we could like put it there and not discuss it immediately, but it was stuff that we definitely need to keep track of. Yeah.
Do you use issues to prepare for change before a code review? I mean, like saying how you want to.
Oh, right. Yeah. Do we use issues or yeah, GitHub issues or some things like that to prepare how we do the code or the solution, basically,
Yeah,
right?
So when the code review is there, everybody agrees on before.
Yeah. Yeah, we explicitly made a design stage in our Kanban board so that, well, for very small issues like updating a library, you obviously don't need a big design, but especially when it came to more than 3 classes or something like that, we usually had a UML where we said, hey, look, this is, I think, how we should solve it. And then later on, you can refer to it as well. We sort of, or if it was less sort of class, but like class design and all that kind of stuff, just scribble it down in the story in Jira, and then you can sort of go, oh yeah, you followed the plan. The plan was agreed upon with 2 or 3 people, so we're good. Like, and so you don't run into that thing where, yeah, the whole structure is wrong, so you can start over again. Yeah, I think that's really important. I think all the work up front really pays out in the end. The code review should really be a, oh, look, this is not an optimal thing, or yeah, that kind of stuff, I think. All right, thanks very much. See ya.